Okay, good stuff. I'll get started at this point and we'll go through the session. So hello and welcome to our What's New webinar series. So this is designed to summarise and take you through the changes that have been made to Colleague as part of our latest release. In this case, this will be release 24.02.02. So we'll be looking to book out with these series. We'll be looking to book out about an hour for each webinar. In some webinars, that will be about right. But in others, dependent on the contents of the release, ultimately, we might finish a bit early. But there's also an opportunity to ask questions through the Q&A area in the session as well. So please fire away with questions. If you could keep the queries on point with the purpose of the session, ultimately being based on the new features. Obviously, if there are support related items or anything of that nature, the support team are there to obviously assist with those items. The session's being recorded, so we'll send out a copy of the recording to the subscribers of the What's New series after the session. So let's get started. I'll start by basically just going through some of the basic element of just finding the release notes. So effectively, once you've been upgraded in Colleague, there's two things that happen. One, through a notification. So there's a notification that you'll be advised of with regards to the upgrade, and then you have a link through to the release notes. But if that notification has come and gone, then effectively you've got the option at any time to go over to the question mark where it says help. You'll be able to click on that, and then where it's at the very top of the help file, we'll always have the latest release. So there'll be a link to the release. There'll be the current release ultimately will be top left hand side as well if you're unsure about that. And there'll be obviously a video which is a summarized video. It's not with talking, it's just a very brief overview with some music on it, just taking you through the features. But at any point you can obviously click on these links to click here for the information, and obviously that will take you to the release note, and obviously that allows you to then read through and see what we've worked on for the course of February. So effectively, what we'll start by doing is the user overview panels. So if I jump over to the panels here, and this is what you're seeing here. So just to explain what's been done and what's happened. So this is a picture of the previous user overview panels, and effectively they serve the purpose of allowing for a user to be informed when they log in on their stats, ultimately giving them access to go to records that they're working with on a regular basis, and also there may be obviously KPIs associated with their stats, so it's obviously to give them a ready hand with that. But effectively for quite some time it's been an area that we've wanted to adjust because it's quite locked down in the way that it presents the dials. Obviously, when we have a dial that advises a stat, it's locked to a specific period, this week, today, for example. So what we wanted to do was create panels that the user could define themselves with regards to the period of time they're associated to that. And ultimately, if there's any targets against that, it to be very clear to the user what the targets are. Hence, we've now got these new user overview panels. Now, in terms of their deployment, we didn't just deploy out the new user overview everywhere because we're very mindful that on multiple sites there's been very specific user overview panels set up, user enable dial, should I say, set up for those users. And so effectively it meant that it's just not appropriate really to just windmill in with these new panels and change that up without some warning. So what we're doing is we're essentially advising clients site by site that the panels are available, and obviously giving them the option to move over to these panels. If you'd like to, obviously, please just let us know, go through the support team, and they'll implement these panels for you. It's quite straightforward to go about that. But in terms of the key differences, the main point ultimately is the range. So normally a panel has a set range, whereas these panels obviously are configurable in the sense of you can view the stats for last year, last quarter, last month, last week, today. If you wanted, you can use the date range option. And if you use the date range option, then these date options become available, and you can then configure and change around the dates as you want them to be. Otherwise, these dates just advise the range that they're associated to, obviously by this week, and then these aren't landable in that scenario. So you have to select date range to be able to then edit these dates. You also have obviously the user drop down, as you do always, and there is now option for a user image as well to be shown there, just for just from a UI perspective, just see the user's image. When selecting any of these dials, it will obviously take you down to the table beneath that will give you obviously the details associated to that, and obviously links through to the records as well. And there's a back to top to obviously take you back to the top of the record. In terms of the targets, if I just go through the release notes top down. So first and foremost, yeah, if we talk about the user settings area to begin with, so if we go to if a user wants to configure this area for themselves, over the username in the top right hand side, you've got a section called user settings, and then from here you've got a section called user overview. So user overview will give you all of the available panels that are deployed as standard. If you've had any bespoke panels delivered to you, then obviously those will be shown to you as well in here. But effectively, the panels that you're seeing here that have been selected and that are being shown are the panels that effectively have been selected here, and then just hit add and it just adds them. Or realistically, you can just double click and it adds them as well. But yeah, effectively what that means is when you're on the home page, user overview obviously pulls through those panels specific to what the user has asked for. From an administrator's perspective, obviously, if there's a need for there to be just a general design for the user overview, and you don't want all the users to have their own way of editing that, defining whether or not a user can edit their own user overview is within user group permissions. And from an administrator's perspective, they can go to user overview in here, and obviously set up people's panels themselves. So they can obviously just select users and decide what panels they have. Or if you want to select, use essentially an overview, you've got that option as well to select a global setting panels as well from this view. But yeah, effectively the idea is that you can obviously select whatever you need to from this section. Next along is, let me just move that out of the way. Next along is obviously the actual targets maintenance area itself with regards to the panel. So you notice obviously on the panels you'll have an advised target, and yeah, effectively an animation effect to dial essentially that's giving you an idea of how that target is being achieved in terms of their activity. So again, within the admin area, under report targets, you've got a section for where targets are assigned to the users. I've got my targets set up here. Now to give you an idea of how you can kind of know what targets are associated to what panels. Again, if we go back to our release notes, within here you've got a link to a spreadsheet that we put together, which just gives you a link, an overview of effectively what dial. So these are obviously the names of the dials. These are the periods that are associated with those dials. It's a total dial, as in just giving you an overview of everything, as opposed to a dial that's based on a specific specified parameter. And then obviously what that associated target is, and the target type as well. So what I mean by that is, if I was to go to our report targets, and I'll pick on candidate. I'll pick on this telephone candidate option as the point. So if I just delete off that target, and we'll add a new one. So this is the target essentially for this panel here. If we hit new target, and then we select the teams associated, and I'll obviously select this user from that drop down. And then in terms of the activity, we're looking for telephone. So again, if we go back to our spreadsheet, you can see that obviously telephone calls is based on the telephone obviously target. So we select telephone, and then the entity type is candidate. The option you have with regards to the activity count. So you can have the target based on the number of times that specific activity, in this case a telephone call, has been made, or you can have that target being based on the number of records that effectively have been called. So you know, if someone has called 3 candidates separately, then obviously that's calling a 3. But if someone has made 5 phone calls and it's to 2 candidates, technically from a record perspective, that person's called 2 people. So it's based on how you want to target people, obviously in terms of calls made or specifically calls to people made. And then you've got the unit of measure. And I'll assign weekly, but obviously you can see the different options here that are available. The targets also adjust based on your period, so I'll show you what I mean by that in a second. But if we put a target count of say 20 there, that will obviously assign the target of 20 on a weekly basis for telephone calls made. And then you have an active date. So that's the date from which this target should be activated. So if you wanted over the course of a month for there to be a target that's at the first week of the month, then a different target at the second week, or over the course of months throughout the course of the year, you can create targets and obviously have specific active dates, which is when those targets kick in. But if I hit save there, that creates the target. And I'll go back here and I'll just refresh that. So what you can see is that candidate called target is now at 20, and obviously the dial responds on the basis of that. But also what we can see as well is if we adjust our target, so let's say we adjust it to this month, the target will take the weekly target and it will times it by 4 on the basis that it's now a monthly target. If we did it on the basis of today, again, the target would divide down to be specific to what could be a daily target on the basis of that weekly target that's been given. And also if the target is on a date range, again, that can get quite specific in terms of how you wanted it to be listed there, and obviously again that target will update automatically depending on the specified date range. So it will figure out the range of time from those 2 dates, and it will assign the appropriate target calculated based on the target you've assigned against the user. To add a user record picture against the user overview, that's done within the users section. So from an admin perspective, you go to your users, and then if I go to my demo user, you can see there that obviously the profile picture has been assigned there. So yeah, you just drag and drop a picture into that slot, and that will obviously be that user's profile picture. But that's how it then appears as you're seeing it there. And then obviously as you're switching between different users, obviously the profile picture will change. Okay, the only other thing to essentially raise is bespoke panels. So if as a client you have asked for bespoke panels, obviously there'll be some work involved in converting those panels, or those dials, sorry, that you had done previously into this panel format. And also if there's a need to create any bespoke panels for you in this format, then again, it's all possible. It's just done through consultancy. So again, just let us know as and when in terms of regards to your requirements for panels. But that's the new user overview. And again, if you're interested in moving to this format, then please reach out to the support team and just let us know. And then obviously they'll set things in motion. Okay, so the next thing along with regards to the release notes is unfinished workflows. So unfinished workflows is essentially the issue that has been raised with us for some time, and that's effectively that if you previously were to start a workflow in the system and then choose for whatever reason to close down the tab or navigate away from the record, if that workflow was still in progress, if you hadn't hit save yet or anything like that, then obviously the scenario would be that the tab would be closed and the record or the workflow that you tried to run would be lost. So a classic example is, hitting create history, starting a history and saying whatever it is you wanted to say, and then getting distracted or what have you, and moving over to somewhere else, and then closing down a tab, and just hitting the close down tab, or navigating to somewhere else. Now what you'll see is that this leave site option appears, which is a browser default setting. To be fair, we're just enabling that, and then if you hit a leave, it will essentially navigate away from the system, or in this case it will be closing down a tab. If you hit cancel, it would obviously abort whatever you'd asked it to do in terms of closing the tab or moving away from the record, and you get a little message to explain why you got that. So what would have been lost if you had gone, and that would be the history data. So obviously that allows you to then finish the whatever it is you were doing, and then obviously navigate away as you wanted to. Same thing can be said for another big one, which is sending emails. So if you were to click there and obviously start typing an email, and then again, for whatever reason, you navigate away. Let's click on recent items as an example. Again, you get this warning. Do you want to leave? And if you do choose to leave, obviously it will just allow you to leave. But again, if you didn't want to leave, it would stop you from doing that. And we've applied that effectively throughout the system on all of the workflows, ultimately the add new workflows. But the key thing to raise is that it requires that you have at least done something on the workflow. So for example, if we create history and then we, and it's a bad example, if we were to create an email, but then we didn't actually start typing or anything, yeah, it does still trigger, actually saying that. Sorry, there'll be some workflows where you can still navigate away. It requires that you edit the form. But yeah, effectively, yeah, you discard off or you choose to leave based on that. There is also the fact that if you were to try and move away, if you've done this multiple times and the leave site option has been triggered multiple times, it does give you this tick box, which again is a browser setting, which allows you to leave and not be told about this dialogue. Now, if users choose to tick that, they will be able to override this, and there's nothing we can do about that as a browser solution. Browsers by default don't allow sites to control it indefinitely. They allow it to be warned, as this is a warning, but they don't allow to stop indefinitely users from leaving websites for obvious reasons. So effectively, if a user chooses to still leave and also tick that option, it will kind of override and undermine the whole workflow. But the option is there, obviously, to be informed and obviously be aware. Next thing along is to do with mail shot status expiry. So this is effectively, I mean, the mail shot status is a field that has long since been in the system. This will obviously help prevent candidates or contacts from being included in bulk mailers if they have asked not to be, or for you to put in configurable settings, like if you only want them to be bulked SMS or bulked email, but not SMS, you've obviously got those settings in there as well. But the option that's been added in here is to do with allow none, and there essentially be an expiry date to that request. So if the candidate or contact has said to you, don't contact me for the next 6 months because I'm not planning on looking, and ultimately your emails will not be of interest, then you can ultimately put an expiry date to their request. So you can obviously put a date there, and what that basically will mean is when that date comes, there's an operated schedule in the background which will then reset this back to allow all, and that will kind of reallocate the candidate and make them open to receiving bulk emails again. So that's a new option that has been added. The other thing as well that's been done is that when editing the mailshot status field, you get obviously a history with regards to that. So you get a history with regards to mailshot status being changed manually, and you get a history with regards to it being changed automatically based on this service. Both of those will go into the history area. The next point along is to do with contacts, and ultimately being able to add contacts to a list from the company area. So to do this, we'll go to a company record, go to colleague software. And then essentially the request was when in a company and when on the contacts tab, you've got obviously the ability to select multiple contacts, right click, and then you can email those contacts. But what we've also added now is the option to add contacts to a list and also to remove them from a list as well. Those options are also available in the toolbar up here. But yeah, effectively, if you wanted to add these contacts to a list, you click on that, and then the add to list functionality works as per normal. If you wanted to create a new list, let's call it contact list DP, hit OK there, and that adds those contacts to that list. And ultimately, the idea is over time, as ever with lists, those lists build up to contain the contacts that you want them to contain. I mean, removing contacts for lists is just the reverse of that. Effectively, you would select contacts, right click, and remove them, and then select which list they're being removed from. So that needed a refresh, I think. So what's happening there? I'll move on, come back to that. Right, okay, so next one along is add to lists from the requirement candidates tab. So if we go to a requirement candidate, no, sorry, to a requirement, should I say? What's happened to this session? Okay. Let's start again. Okay, so from a requirement, the option that's been added now is on the candidates tab. And that's effectively if you wanted to add a batch of candidates to a list again. The option is there now to, if you like, you could select a bunch of these candidates or individually select the candidates, right click, and then you've got this option that's been added here called add requirements to list. So if you had if you created a decent set of candidates against a requirement and you wanted to put those candidates into a list, or just in general, just you worked with a candidate and you wanted to put them into a list from this area, essentially you've got that option to do that here. So again, I'll add a new list, call it EP list. Hit OK there, and then obviously that adds those records to the list. It seems to have woke up there. Sorry, there might have been something that happened on the server, the demo server there. But yeah, effectively, if I go back to the contacts one as well, from here, obviously you've got the option to right click, hit remove, and then again, select on different lists that you might want to add or remove. those contacts to from. Sorry. Yeah, so in terms of the other point along in this list is bulk removing. Again, sticking with lists. Effectively, the process of removing a record from a list was becoming very cumbersome, ultimately doing it one at a time. The option is now there to obviously select list items and remove from list in bulk. So you can select those, hit remove from list, hit yes, and then obviously that will obviously remove those records as a whole. That same option is available from a search as well. So if we were to go to the search area, and then if I just bring up a list of records from the search, again, the option is there to select groups of records, right click, and then you've got remove from lists in this area as well. So again, you can select on different lists that you want to remove them from, hit OK, and that obviously removes those records from that list. The next point along is to do with GDPR consent requests. So we go to here and I'll open up a candidate again. So obviously this is for clients that obviously are utilizing the GDPR functionality, but ultimately the functionality has always been there to to request GDPR consent from the candidate or contact, and then based on their response, it automatically update the record. But it's been something that you've had to trigger manually. So from the candidate record, sorry, from the contact record or the candidate record, when you're sending an email, the option has been there to type an email of some sort to the candidate and then click on this option, and then that will generate a link. And obviously that link is then pasted into the message body. However, obviously that's a manual process, requires clicking on that. So and also there's a need for automated welcome emails and things of that nature to happen overnight, which call on that functionality as well. So there are now merge fields ultimately. So the option is there to use GDPR confirm and GDPR reject consent. These two merge fields have been added into that set, and those actually work in exactly the same way as if you click that button, but it's just you don't have to click that button. The merge fields obviously will just do the work as part of being sent, and what that effectively means is that you can then incorporate them into a template. So if you had a template like GDPR consent request, those merge fields would be in there as you'd expect, and it would just ultimately just work without you needing to press any buttons or anything like that. You could obviously just send those emails, and obviously that will send the email, but also process the GDPR links in there as well. WhatsApp. So yeah, Colleague has integrated with WhatsApp over the course of the last couple of months. How that works with regards to WhatsApp is effectively when you're on a candidate or contact record, what is normally the SMS icon is changed to be message if you've got WhatsApp enabled, that is. And then where you've got WhatsApp here, you can click on this option. It will give you the conversations that you have with the candidate or contact. And then you can click on those conversations and it launches a panel on the right-hand side that obviously allows you to communicate with WhatsApp. So they have got some stipulations WhatsApp when you're integrating with them, and ultimately when someone is trying to correspond using WhatsApp for Business. The key point which makes it different from SMS is that when you're starting a new conversation, it has to be utilizing a template. You cannot start a WhatsApp conversation with it being free text. So effectively you start with a template of some kind that sort of instigates and starts what's referred to as a business initiated conversation. And then if the candidate or contact, but realistically candidate replies to you, then that opens up a conversation that you then have with that person. So that will allow then obviously for the dialogue to come back, and ultimately you to begin typing, are you interested in a new job at X, and so on. And obviously you can then send messages back and forth via WhatsApp, and obviously then that will go through into here. There's obviously a setup process for doing this. It requires, sadly, that you have to set up a WhatsApp for Business and an app ID account in Meta. You have to become a Meta developer as well. There's a whole workflow that's required on the Meta website to go through setting this up. We do have a WhatsApp integration document. Which ultimately can be sent out to people that are interested in doing this. This document ultimately has evolved as well from when it was first sent out based on feedback. So we're on the 4th iteration of this file now, but effectively it will give you an overview of the steps that need to be taken to ultimately to setting up the WhatsApp account. From a colleague perspective, there are no colleague related costs with regards to using WhatsApp. It's all very much on WhatsApp's account. So I believe they seem to be charging somewhere between 3 to 4p per message. There's some quota with regards to business initiated conversations that obviously is something to take into account as well. And yeah, again, if you're interested in utilizing WhatsApp for Business, then obviously get in touch and we'll go about assisting to set this up on your system. There's another element to know, and that's to do with the mobile numbers. So WhatsApp requires that WhatsApp for Business, that is, requires that you're using a fresh number ultimately when you're doing WhatsApp for Business messaging. If you wanted to migrate an existing mobile number that you've used historically to send WhatsApp messages, it's going to ask that you delete that WhatsApp account associated with that mobile number and start again with a WhatsApp for Business account associated to that number. So the easiest thing to do really would be to buy a SIM card or something that would allow you to obviously start fresh with a mobile number. You then set that up against the WhatsApp Business account. They send you a verification code to that mobile number. It links up, and then that's now in place moving forwards. But yeah, effectively that's the WhatsApp for Business integration. With regards to the features in this build, so when it was first released as part of the last build that went out the door, it could only have one mobile number associated with the system. So there'd be a global setting WhatsApp mobile number that would be your business mobile. However, it now supports multiple users. Well, it supports each user having their own mobile number if you wanted to have it set up that way. So effectively, that's a key update that was made. Also, with regards to just histories and merge fields, obviously it uses templates, and previously the merge fields would come through showing just a hash sign, whereas now it brings through the actual merge field data. It would always do that part of the sending process, but just part of the login process in Colleague, and as part of the histories, it's all just pulling through that merge data as you'd expect. WhatsApp icon, it's a little thing, but yeah, effectively just WhatsApp icons obviously have been added as well. And the last point is the refresh button. So if you were liaising with someone through WhatsApp and you are kind of waiting for their response, if you like, and so you just thought, I'll leave this tab open, and you move on to another tab, another workflow, and so on, and then periodically you could come back to this and just hit refresh, and that obviously would refresh the conversation. When someone does reply, you do get a WhatsApp notification up here that just makes you aware of, that you've had a response and it was from this record, and you can then click on that to go to the record in terms of the response. But yeah, effectively, if you wanted to just keep a panel open and just periodically check on it and just hit refresh, then it would obviously work in that way. That's the option that's been added there. The next point along is to do with the portals. So this is only really relevant for people that have got the colleague portal in place. But if you do, then are logging as a candidate. But yeah, effectively from within a candidate portal now, if they are adding an expense, the option has been added for them to specify the date that expense took place. Previously, they would have to type that into the description. So you can actually now put a date for the expense against the record, and also the gross and the net value are modifiable. So rather than, if you just wanted to put the net value into here, the gross value would update. likewise, if you just wanted to put the gross value into here, again, the net value would update. So it kind of calculates working on each, and again, that expense date is there, and that's to be said also in the charge record against the placement, that extra date field has been added as well, just as a way of allowing someone to specifically say this is the date for when the expense took place, rather than just claiming for the expense. Beyond that, these are bug fixes, which essentially you can read through in the release notes, and we'll continue obviously working through any bug fixing or any issues that are raised with the system as an ongoing project. Ultimately, it's as to be expected. So as part of each release, there's always fixes as well as tweaks, as well as obviously new functionality. So in terms of the Q&A side of things, I think now's a good time to see if there's any questions. I don't have any in here, so yeah, effectively from a session perspective, that's the session. That's ultimately what we'll go through on a monthly basis, and as I say, sometimes there'll be plenty to go through, and sometimes it will be a shorter session, again just depending on the features that are covered. If you have any feedback, any points, apologies for that period about 10-15 minutes ago where the system seemed to lock for some reason. But if you've got any feedback, anything that you want also covered in these sort of sessions, obviously that's helpful. Please send that through. And also just in general, we're also looking at other webinar series as well, more about sort of general sections of the system, just functionality as a whole. We'll be doing other webinars about those, so we'll let you know on those as well, as and when those sessions are being booked in and arranged. But thank you very much for your time. As I say, I'll send a copy of this recording after during the course of this afternoon, and then obviously that's available for you to distribute as well for those that might need to see this session as well. But thank you very much, and yeah, you're free to jump off. Take care. Cheers then.